Okay, week 3 in CIT95 Python, and in the real world, it's week 2. And I had waited to record this video in hopes that I might have some student questions to cover. But it seems like most of you have gotten a really good start. And I know some of you that first week of week 0 for setting up your local dev environment could definitely create some challenges. And I'll tell you my reasoning there of why and you may not have been one of these students who were already enrolled, but that's why I release courses early, like programming courses, so that you have a little extra time. But no matter how well I'm trying to plan, some of you, for whatever reasons, may not see it. And so that first week can feel like, oh my God, is this really what you have to do to learn coding? And the truth of this coding industry is having some experience with version control is going to be important in a lot of different ways. And I feel it's important for you to have that environment set up. But I did give an option for those students to use the Replit. But I know that also creates kind of also a little more work. So it makes sense. And it's kind of bite the bullet and get it done. But I just want you to know I hear you and that this can be a bit of a challenge. So as we move into week 3, that's when I'm recording that you will see this. And some of you are working ahead, which I definitely recommend doing. This week, as we move from your first Learn Together assignment where you're taking something and you're modifying it to give you that experience of see how well you can create your own challenges, right? In a sense. And remember that the idea here is you do want to challenge yourself because I mean, the analogy goes on and on about weightlifting or working out. So the more weights I try and attempt to lift, or the more cardio and longer I do it, the better I get at it. So if I'm being pushed, which is part of the reason I like to work out where I do, they push me. They kind of yell at me sometimes. I'm not yelling at you, but if I could, I wouldn't yell. I would just encourage you to challenge yourself. Now, this week, in addition to just, you've had your first Learn Together. Now, this week is a little different for us from last week because we're going to do 2 days in the Udemy course. And I love this Udemy course. You may have heard me say this already. I'm using a different Udemy course for my JavaScript class. And each week, those students have a code along and a Learn Together. And because of the way Dr. Angela approaches teaching this, I can give 2 days here because I love the kind of hands on experience you're getting. Now, having said that, I do want to just reiterate with you the goal of this coding challenge because I know I can imagine all of you are different, but I can imagine as you approach those coding challenges, there may be a moment where I'll just watch the solution and include that code. And here's what I want you to know, that you want to give this experience of first learning Python, running Python, um, and having learning different concepts about programming in general. Now, but the concepts that you're learning are pretty universal through all programming languages. They just may be implemented differently. Like the if block in Python is different than the if block in JavaScript, but in a sense they're the same of of how you write code to do a logic, a logic check. But the point of this discussion here is for you to really give that coding challenge its due, because it is where you are growing your muscle of how well did you get that concept, and spend some time trying to do it. And then when you commit your code, that is your way of showing me how well you got it. And I can understand if there's a moment of, oh, I don't want to show Rio how much I didn't get it. Doesn't help you, doesn't help me help you. So I just want you to, if you have that moment, come talk to me. I would really love to talk to a student who'd be willing and honest about that it's hard for them to share, hard for them, the student, to share code for their attempt because they feel like it just didn't even get close. If you didn't do it, right, I would say you didn't try, and you might ask yourself why. But if you did do it and didn't exactly meet the output requirements, trying, giving it time is what I'm talking about. Okay, so I just want you to, as you move into this week, because we have two of these days, you have two opportunities to face these coding challenges, see how well you're translating the concepts. Now, I've said this to a couple people, so I thought I would just say it here. And I'm switching topics here, is on the actual naming standards of things in general. And we're also using PEP 8 for our coding style guide, which also basically says file names and folder names should be all lowercase, not camel case. If you know what camel case is, we see camel case really used more in JavaScript, but in Python it could be as well. Typically, we use underscore or dashes in Python, but even there, I just recommend all lowercase. So when you're doing day, right? Lowercase d, day, and this week it's 3, and then you create 4 when you do 4, no spaces. Websites don't like spaces in the file name. They have to render it with this crazy percent 20 because it has to inject something into the URL, because otherwise it won't know. It won't be able to render that URL. But that's for the website of the house. Even if we're not necessarily writing web code, it still is a good naming standard. So lowercase, no spaces as a standard. Okay, let's go look real quick. I was actually just looking at some PEP 8 requirements, which, by the way, you learn this more as we go through. And somebody asked a good question about PEP 8 in our discussion, so you can check that out as well. So here we have, right, let's actually go look, because I think I took a few notes for topics I wanted to talk about here. So, overview of day 3 and 4. So, I love day 3 and 4. Day 3 is flow control and logical operators. These are just, great if else, right? And ors. And there's some really fun interactive exercises. The pizza order, the love calculator, which made me chuckle, and then your project is Treasure Island. I do have in the instruction file for day 3 that, if you want to, go share that out on Discord and talk about, your approach, how you kind of handled the Treasure Island. Oop, right here. And then day 4, randomization and list. Okay, so every programming language has some type of what we call primitive that handles lists. In JavaScript, we call them arrays. In Python, we call them list, but they're basically the same. But this project is rock scissors paper, and again, give this project its due, because it's really going to see how well you translated these concepts of understanding how to index list, how to write code that achieves a specific requirement, for, in this case, playing rock, scissors, paper, right? And look at that, the analogy of going to the gym. It's right there. So just follow my instruction, just like we've done before. We have one for day 3 and day 4. Day 4, I think did have to modify the file a little bit. Oh yeah, because I think I forgot to put in the Python, my module.python. What I mean by that is actually, here's what I mean by that. And I'll fix it. I think I already fixed it in day 4. In each day, I do give you, remember, I give you, here's the files that you're going to create. Notice how that naming standard is here intact. Notice that link here, but remember, these are the files you create, but really what I'm looking for is for you to commit give me your commit history, and then what that allows you and I both to see is your specific commit, so that I can go look at that specific code that you wrote in there. Okay. And then in this case, I also actually have you um, write a comment in your README file. So make sure you catch that as well. Okay, so just rolling back a little bit here to day 3, my attendance post. Um, the other thing is next week I will cover the first dev, which is coming up in week 6. And I noticed today something, and I want you to know I didn't necessarily plan this, is that, and I'll just roll forward in the calendar, which by the way, the calendar is great. Definitely recommend using it. The calendaring function just gives you, and you can see the day I'm recording this. Um, and when holidays hit, I move things over, but what happens is the next item doesn't get moved, so you still have the same amount of work. It's just a little less time. So here we are in week 3, week 4. Well, sorry, here's week 3 and then week 4. And then as we roll into February, week 5, right? And then in week day, sorry, that's day, not week. So here we have week 4, week 5. Here is week 6. And our first dev project falls, meaning it has to be complete by the 14th, which is Valentine's. So sorry about that. But you don't have to wait till then. And that's actually the point of my looking at this, which I will talk more about the dev, and I'll go over the requirements. And the reason I wait a little bit to do this is because I want you to have some experience with some of these concepts before I start looking at the requirements of what you have to write. So next week in our class in week 4, I will go over those um, requirements, just to give you an overview of them. Okay, so I generally ask students as kind of proof of, did you watch the whole video, to do that. And what I would like to see in your reply is you can ask about anything we've talked about here. PEP 8 is something I've been requiring, so you'll definitely see me as you submit code. I pull your code into my system. If I find PEP 8 issues, I will reference them in your score, so make sure you're getting that or asking questions about that. But the thing I'd like to know, you can ask me about that as well. You can ask me about anything I've covered. But the thing, if you have nothing else you'd like to say, I would love to hear how well, or how this process of watching the video to the point of understanding the coding challenge, stopping it, and doing your code attempt in that. How is that working for you? How does that feel? And is that something that, brings up some anxiety for you? You know, and do you understand the benefit of it? Okay, my phone's ringing. Time to go. Have a good one.